Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Stoicism. Sometimes it gets this image of just being this, ancient philosophy, right?
Kind of dusty and academic.
Yeah, exactly. But we're going to treat it as something much more real, like a toolkit for, actually living better.
Practical.
Practical. And it's not just us saying that. Think about the figures who were drawn to it. George Washington, Walt Whitman, even emperors like Marcus Aurelius.
And these weren't just, philosophers sitting in ivory towers. They were out there leading armies, writing, running empires.
Exactly. They used these ideas actively to be more effective.
Yeah.
And that's something we're seeing reflected really well in this book, The Daily Stoic.
It really hits on that practical side. And you know what's amazing? Even Schopenhauer.
Not exactly known for being, super positive.
Oh, right. He called Stoicism the highest point to which man can attain by the mere use of his faculty of reason. That's quite the endorsement coming from him.
Definitely speaks to its power.
Yeah.
So, for our deep dive today, that's exactly what we're after. How Stoic principles can basically give you a shortcut.
A shortcut to being well-informed, as the book puts it, but really well-informed for living a better life.
Right. Not just knowing stuff, but actually applying it. So forget those abstract debates. We're going for the immediately useful stuff, right here, right now.
Absolutely. And at the core of it, Stoicism offers a path to genuine self-mastery, you could say, that inner strength to stay steady no matter what happens.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but it also feels kind of vast. Where do we even begin with all this Stoic wisdom?
Well, the Daily Stoic lays out what it calls the big three: perception, action, and will.
And these come straight from Marcus Aurelius, right? Why are they so important?
Because they work together. Think of it like this. Perception is about how you see the world, how you interpret what's going on around you.
Okay, making sense of things.
Right. Then action, that's about your choices, how you behave, how you interact with the world based on your perception.
So not just thinking, but doing.
Exactly. But then there's will, sometimes called assent. This is your internal response. Your judgments, what you decide to accept, what you reject, all of that.
So it's not just about seeing and doing, but also choosing how we feel about it all.
You got it. And while Stoicism as a whole can get pretty intricate, focusing on these three gives you the most practical benefit, right away. They're at the foundation.
So if you understand those, you've got the basics down.
Exactly.
Now, one of the ideas that really grabbed my attention was this whole freedom from compulsions thing. It's about how easily we can lose the freedom to, abstain.
And in today's world, that feels incredibly relevant. Think about it. Marcus Aurelius didn't have Twitter to distract him, but even he talked about gossip, about being pulled in different directions.
And today, it's just amplified, right?
Oh, exponentially. Constant notifications, outrage cycles online, the way our devices are designed to keep us hooked.
And it's not just those obvious addictions either, is it? It could be checking your phone without even thinking, needing that afternoon coffee.
Right. Anything that becomes this compulsion, even a small one, it chips away at your self-control. You lose that ability to just say no.
And reclaiming that ability, that's a huge part of what Stoicism is about.
Absolutely. It's about regaining control, not just over what you do, but over your own mind.
Makes sense. Now, another point that resonated with me was Seneca's reminder about external fixes. That all the stuff, even wealth, doesn't really solve internal problems.
Oh, yeah. That really hit home for me, too, especially with the anecdote about F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway.
Fitzgerald being so disillusioned by the wealthy.
Right. He expected them to be something they weren't. But Seneca, he knew better. He'd been rich himself. He understood that stuff only changes things superficially.
Doesn't magically fix your anxieties or anything.
Exactly. It's like people think, oh, if only I had this, then I'd be happy. But the Stoics say happiness isn't found out there. It's an inside job.
And we see this even today, right? Like Warren Buffett living in a modest house, Kawhi Leonard driving his old car.
Exactly. They understand it's not about being cheap. It's about knowing what truly matters. And those things can't be bought.
So how do we train ourselves to want the right things? Epictetus had a pretty practical system for that, focusing on three main areas. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. First, there's this idea of training your desires and aversions. Basically, figuring out what you truly want versus what you're just drawn to.
Because what we initially want isn't always good for us.
Right. So you have to apply reason. Ask yourself, is this really necessary? Will this actually benefit me in the long run?
So it's about being more intentional, not just following every impulse.
Exactly. Then the second part is about those impulses to act. You need to examine your motivations. Are you acting thoughtfully or just reacting? Do you even know why you're doing something?
That's a good question to ask yourself.
Right. And then the third part is about handling impressions. It's like creating a pause between something happening and your reaction to it. Think before you act.
Don't just get swept away by your emotions.
Precisely. So it's about understanding your desires, acting with intention, and then managing your reactions.
A multi-layered approach.
It is. It's about using reason, not just emotion.
Okay, so that's a lot of internal work. Another idea I found super useful is about focusing on the present moment. It reminded me of Bill Belichick's do your job philosophy.
Oh yeah, that's a great comparison. Belichick is all about concentrating on the task at hand, not dwelling on the past, not worrying about the future, not getting distracted by other teams.
Just focus on what you can control, right?
Right. And Marcus Aurelius says the same thing, but centuries earlier, he talks about being like a Roman soldier or a skilled craftsman. Total focus on the present moment.
It makes sense. All that worrying about what ifs just drains your energy.
Exactly. So what could you accomplish if you just focused on the job in front of you right now? It could be anything work, a conversation, even just enjoying a moment of peace.
It's about being present.
Yeah.
Now, all this connects really well to this idea of philosophy as medicine for the soul.
Yeah.
It's not just theory, it's about actually helping you feel better.
That's a great analogy. It's like you seek treatment for your body when it's hurting, right? Well, Stoicism is about finding that inner peace, that clarity, by using reason.
So it's more like personal practice than like showing off how smart you are.
Exactly.
Now, Seneca also warns against seeking out a turbulent life. He emphasizes the value of peace. But in our world, we often glorify the hustle, the constant struggle.
It's true. But Seneca isn't saying you should avoid all challenges. It's more about not actively seeking out chaos and strife.
Like weathering the storm is one thing, but sailing straight into a hurricane is another.
Right. And while some people think anger can be motivating, the Stoics saw it differently. They saw it as unsustainable, even damaging.
Like Martin Luther King Jr. said, hate is too great a burden to bear.
Powerful words.
They really are. Now, this whole discussion about power was fascinating too. The question, tyrant or king, hero or Nero, that applies to all of us, not just emperors.
Absolutely. The Stoics believed that power reveals character. It doesn't necessarily corrupt you. It just amplifies who you already are.
So if you're inclined to be selfish, having power will make you more selfish.
It could. But if you're inclined to be just and fair, power could amplify those qualities too.
So it's a test.
In a way, yes.
Another recurring theme is protecting your peace of mind. That's presented as this ongoing effort.
Right. The Stoics understood that peace of mind is tied to your perceptions, how you react to the world. If you let yourself get tossed around by external events, you lose that inner stability.
Like Seneca said, there are more things, Lucilius, likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality.
Exactly. And Jefferson echoed that sentiment too. We create so much of our own suffering through worry.
Now, this concept of wanting little, that felt pretty radical. The idea that the gods, and those who are like gods, want very little.
Diogenes, right. He was famous for that. And it's counterintuitive, but it makes sense. The less you need, the less you can be harmed by external things.
It's about finding contentment within, rather than always chasing more.
Exactly. It's about being satisfied with what you have, which isn't always easy.
Definitely requires some self-reflection.
It does.
Marcus Aurelius also had this very blunt reminder. Circumstances have no care for your feelings.
That's so true. It's like the universe doesn't care if you're having a bad day. Events just unfold according to their own logic.
So getting angry or upset doesn't actually change the situation. It just affects you.
Right. Your emotions don't influence external reality.
And building on that, the Stoics believe that what really harms us isn't other people's actions, but our own opinions about them.
It's a subtle but crucial distinction. You can't always control what others do, but you can control how you react, how you judge those actions.
So if someone's rude to you, it's not their rudeness that hurts you, but your judgment that it's rude.
Exactly. You're choosing to be upset by it.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is. But it's also empowering. You have more control than you think.
This reminds me of another point Marcus Aurelius made about the ephemeral nature of fame and anger. Like they're just smoke and dust.
Oh, yeah. He was looking back at all these powerful emperors, and now they're mostly forgotten. Their fame meant nothing in the end.
And anger that fades too, right? Usually into regret.
Almost always, like you send that angry email and later you wish you hadn't.
Definitely been there. Now, a key part of Stoicism is their view on good, bad, and indifferent things.
Right. The Stoics believed that virtue is the only true good. Things like wealth, health, even life and death, those are indifferent.
Indifferent. Meaning they don't really matter.
Not in terms of your moral worth. They can be preferred or dispreferred, but they don't make you a good or bad person.
So losing your job doesn't make you a bad person.
Exactly. It's your reaction, your choices that matter.
Okay, so how do we learn to value the right things? The Daily Stoic has this great analogy about a kid in a goodie jar.
Oh yeah, the kid's hand is stuck because he's trying to grab too many treats.
But if he lets go of a few,
He's free. It's the same with desires. If you want too much, you get stuck. But if you simplify, you find freedom.
and you're more likely to get what you truly need.
Exactly. It's also about knowing your own limits. Sometimes we overestimate ourselves just like we underestimate others.
Good point. Now, there's also this idea of disintegration, the need to strive for unity, either good or bad.
Right. Seneca talks about how we can't serve two masters. We're either working towards reason and virtue, or we're giving in to our desires and impulses.
No middle ground.
Not in the long run. And if we choose the wrong path, we end up enslaved to our desires, even if we seem powerful on the outside.
A self-imposed slavery.
Exact.
It's like how we protect our physical selves, but then we let all this negativity and distraction into our minds.
Yeah, that's a great point. We wouldn't let someone just punch us in the face, but we let social media, bad news, all that stuff just pummel our minds.
And it takes a toll.
It does. You have to be just as protective of your mental space as your physical space.
Absolutely. And speaking of influences, we can't forget about the people we surround ourselves with. There's that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
That's a powerful thought. And the Stoics knew this too. Musonius Rufus talks about how our companions can either lift us up or drag us down.
So choose wisely.
Exactly. Goethe had a great line. Tell me with whom you consort, and I will tell you who you are. You really become like the people you spend time with.
Something to think about. Now, Socrates had this interesting idea that nobody does wrong willingly. It suggests that people who harm us might just be mistaken, not evil.
Yeah, that one really makes you think. It's about having empathy. Maybe they genuinely believe they're doing the right thing, even if it seems wrong to you.
So instead of assuming bad intentions, maybe they're just misinformed or something.
Could be. Doesn't excuse their actions, but it helps you understand them better.
Maybe even forgive them.
Possibly.
Another enemy of knowledge, according to the Stoics, is self-deception. Thinking we already know everything.
Oh, that's a huge obstacle to growth. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." If you're not open to being wrong, you can't really learn.
So humility is key.
Absolutely. You have to admit you don't know everything.
Now, speaking of learning, you've got this amazing ability, reason. It's a powerful tool for understanding the world and making good choices.
And it's something we often take for granted. But it's what separates us from animals, allows us to solve problems, build things. It's a gift, but also a responsibility.
To use it wisely.
Exactly.
This brings us to another important concept, hypolepsis. The idea that our emotions, like stress and frustration, come from our judgments, not from external events.
It's a game changer, really. It means that even if something bad happens, your reaction to it is what determines how you feel. You have the power to choose your response.
So it's not your boss yelling at you that makes you stressed. It's your judgment that it's bad to be yelled at.
Right. You're choosing to be stressed by it.
So how does this apply to things like wealth and freedom?
Well, there are two paths, right? You can try to get everything you want, or you can learn to want what you already have.
And the Stoics would say the second path is easier.
Definitely. Epictetus said it best. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants.
That makes a lot of sense. Less wanting, less stress.
Exactly.
And this ties into another point they make, the futility of seeking external validation.
Oh, that's a big one. Trying to impress people you don't even like. Like they say in Fight Club, you buy furniture, you tell yourself, this is the last sofa I will ever need in my life. Buy the sofa, then for a couple years you're satisfied that no matter what goes wrong, at least you've got your sofa issue handled, then the right set of dishes, then the perfect bed, the drapes, the rug, then you're trapped in your lovely nest, and the things you used to own, now they own you.
That's a great quote. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is. But philosophy offers something different. A sense of worth that comes from within, not from other people's opinions.
It's about being true to yourself. Now, you mentioned reason earlier. The Stoics emphasize using reason in all areas of life.
Yeah.
Your own thinking, understanding the bigger picture, and considering other people's perspectives.
It's a holistic approach. It's not just about being smart, it's about being wise. And wisdom comes from seeing things from different angles, including your neighbor's point of view.
So it's about being open-minded.
Definitely.
Now, the Stoics also warn against getting too caught up in external roles and honors. They say what matters is good character and doing good for others.
Right. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor, but he knew those things were temporary. What lasts is your character, the impact you have on the world.
It's about who you are, not what you're called.
Exactly.
One practical tip I really liked was about mentally preparing for negativity, like anticipating difficult people and reminding yourself that they're human too.
That's a great one. It's about building resilience. Instead of being caught off guard by negativity, you're ready for it.
You're not letting it control you.
Right. You're choosing how to respond.
And speaking of responses, Epictetus talks a lot about examining our impressions, questioning our judgments, figuring out what we can control and what we can't.
That's key to avoiding unnecessary suffering. A lot of our stress comes from things we can't control.
So focus on what you can change, let go of the rest.
Exactly.
Now, Seneca makes this interesting observation about how even wealthy people have anxieties. It's like achieving your dreams doesn't always bring happiness.
The grass is always greener syndrome. But Seneca saw through that. He knew that external things can't fix internal problems.
So true happiness comes from within.
Exactly.
Now, another important point is about being willing to change your mind.
Yes. Being open to new information, revising your beliefs. It's a sign of intelligence, not weakness. Like Emerson said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds.
So don't be afraid to admit you are wrong.
Right. The truth is more important than being right all the time.
Now, Marcus Aurelius talks about turning things inside out, looking at things from different angles, thinking about long-term consequences.
It's about seeing the bigger picture. Don't just react emotionally, take a step back and think things through.
Consider all sides.
Exactly.
Now, doing the wrong thing can have serious consequences, not just external punishments, but also internal turmoil, guilt, regret.
Right. The Stoics understood that violating your own principles can be just as damaging as any external punishment. You lose self-respect, you feel bad, it's not worth it.
So act with integrity.
Always.
There's also this intriguing idea about responding to negativity with kindness.
Yeah, like heaping burning coals on their head. It seems counterintuitive, but it can be really powerful.
It throws people off guard, right?
Here.
They expect you to be mean back.
Exactly. And sometimes that kindness can even change their behavior.
So kill them with kindness.
In a way, yes.
Now, back to happiness. The Stoics believe that true well-being comes from your own virtuous actions, not from other people's opinions or external achievements.
Right. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore, guard accordingly." You can't control what other people think, so why base your happiness on that?
Focus on being a good person, and the rest will follow.
Exactly.
They also talk about living a long life, but not in terms of years.
Seneca makes this point beautifully. He says it's about living fully, being present in each moment. It's not about the quantity of time, but the quality of your experience.
So even a short life can be long if you live it well.
Exactly. It's about making each moment count.
And yet, we often put so much stock in what other people think.
It's a strange tendency, isn't it? Marcus Aurelius noticed that too. We value the opinions of others more than our own judgment. But why? We should trust ourselves more.
Be your own judge.
Exactly.
Now, the Stoics also talk about the importance of meaningful work. They say that unfulfilled potential leads to frustration.
Right. Your mind and body need to be active, engaged. They need a purpose. If you're not doing something meaningful, you'll feel restless, empty. You might even turn to harmful things to fill that void.
So find your purpose, find your work.
Exactly.
And it's not just about being busy, right? Epictetus makes a distinction between mere busyness and true industriousness.
Right. He says your work should be aligned with your principles, in harmony with nature. It's not about working hard just for the sake of it. It's about working towards something meaningful.
So work smart, not just hard.
Exactly.
Now, what would you say is our most fundamental vocation?
The Stoics would say it's quite simple to be a good person.
Just like Belichick's do your job.
Exactly. That's your primary responsibility in life. Everything else flows from that.
Be a good human. Now, when we face challenges, the Stoics say we need both flexibility and determination.
Right. If one path doesn't work, try another. Be adaptable, but never give up on your goal of being good.
Keep striving. And they say that difficulties are inherent to life. They're not something to complain about. They're just part of the experience.
Like Seneca said, the good things which belong to prosperity are to be wished, but the good things which belong to adversity are to be admired. You grow from challenges.
So embrace them.
Yes, see them as opportunities to learn and improve.
And speaking of learning, sometimes we need to change course. Maybe we realize we're on the wrong path.
That takes courage, but it's important to be honest with yourself. If something's not working, don't be afraid to make a change.
But also don't be indecisive, jumping from one thing to another.
Right. Find the balance. Be discerning. Stick with what's truly important, but don't be afraid to pivot when you need to.
And when we need guidance, they recommend looking to those who came before us.
Oh, absolutely. Read books, study biographies. Find those who lived well and learn from them. Like Seneca said, we should choose those whose children we wish to be. Who do you admire? Whose footsteps do you want to follow?
That's a great question. Now, another Stoic practice is mentally preparing for adversity. Like imagining things going wrong.
It's not about being pessimistic, it's about being realistic. If you mentally prepare for setbacks, they won't hit you as hard, you'll be ready.
It's like a mental rehearsal.
Exactly.
And even the Stoics recognize that sometimes we need help. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for assistance.
Absolutely not. Marcus Aurelius compared it to a soldier needing help on the battlefield. It's foolish to struggle alone when you could get support.
So don't be afraid to reach out.
Never.
Another key idea is about shifting our focus from trying to control external events to building inner resilience.
Seneca talks about this a lot. He says, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable. You can't control everything that happens, but you can control your reaction."
So focus on what you can influence your own thoughts and actions.
Right. Build that inner strength.
Now, Marcus Aurelius talks a lot about duty, fulfilling your responsibilities no matter what.
That was central to his philosophy. Do your duty, do what's right, regardless of the circumstances.
So even when it's hard.
Especially when it's hard.
And that ties into this whole idea of focusing on what you control. Your actions, your choices, your judgments.
That's where your true power lies. You can't control the outcome, but you can control your effort.
So give it your best, but don't get attached to the results.
Exactly.
Now, doing what's honorable isn't always easy.
No, it often requires sacrifice, going against your immediate desires. But the Stoics believed it's always worth it. True fulfillment comes from living virtuously.
So do the right thing, even when it's hard.
Always.
And they say we have a duty to learn and grow throughout our lives.
Absolutely. Seneca recommended studying the classics, like the Odyssey, to learn how to navigate life's challenges.
Timeless wisdom.
It is.
Now, all this philosophy isn't just for philosophers. It's for leaders, too, in all areas of life.
Right. Whether you're leading a team, a family, or just your own life, Stoicism offers valuable tools for making good decisions, navigating difficult situations, and living with integrity.
So it's practical wisdom for everyday life.
Exactly.
Epictetus even compared personal development to building a business. He said, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?
That's from a story about Socrates telling a student, if you want to be a sculptor, find the best sculptor and become their student. If you want to be a carpenter, find the best carpenter.
Apply that to your own life.
Invest in yourself.
Yes.
Now, Marcus Aurelius had some simple but powerful guidelines for living well. Can you remind us of those?
Sure. He said, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. In your actions, be just. In your conversations, be temperate. In your thoughts, be disciplined. In your soul, be unpretentious. In your life, be industrious.
Simple but profound.
Very much so.
Another idea is about leadership through service.
Yes, step up and help others without needing credit or thanks. That's true leadership. Lead by example.
Exactly.
Now, doing the right thing is always a choice, not an obligation.
That's a powerful realization. You get to choose how you act, how you respond. You have that power.
So choose wisely.
Always.
Marcus Aurelius also talked about receiving honors and slights with equanimity.
Right. Don't let praise inflate your ego, and don't let criticism crush you. Stay balanced.
Stay grounded.
Exactly.
And they warn against getting so caught up in work that you neglect other aspects of life.
Seneca said it best. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Don't die in harness, like Solzhenitsyn said.
Make time for what matters.
Absolutely.
The Stoics also remind us that the world is imperfect. We shouldn't be surprised by difficulties.
It's like a carpenter working with wood. There will always be knots, imperfections. It's just the nature of things.
So accept it and move on.
Right. Don't waste energy complaining about what can't be changed.
Now, Even in difficult circumstances, we still have the power to choose.
That's a powerful point. Think about Nelson Mandela. He spent decades in prison, yet he maintained his inner strength, his sense of purpose.
He chose how he would respond.
Exactly.
Sometimes the best response is silence.
That's a lesson we often learn through hardship. Sometimes it's better to say nothing at all.
Choose your words carefully.
Always.
Now, some people think that being ethical means being impractical. But the Stoics believed those two things could coexist.
They did. Think about Abraham Lincoln. He faced incredibly difficult challenges, yet he held on to his principles. He showed that it's possible to be both good and effective.
A true leader.
He was.
And they say that we don't have to wait for perfect conditions to start living well.
Marcus Aurelius put it this way: do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. Don't procrastinate.
Start now.
Exactly.
And so much of our suffering comes from not using our reason to deal with fears and anxieties.
It's true. We let our emotions run wild. But the Stoics say we have the power to choose different thoughts, more rational thoughts.
Use your mind to calm your mind.
Exactly.
Now, all this philosophy, it's not just for intellectual discussion. It's for real life.
That's the whole point. Seneca said, philosophy is not a subject for popular consumption. It is not intended to charm the crowd. It is not designed to make a show of itself. It is intended to soothe the troubled mind, to curb passion, to inspire courage, to reconcile a man to death, and